Hey folks, in this tutorial we're going to talk briefly about how to use frame ranges with Faceware Retargeter. Now, regardless of which application you're using, in this case I'm in Maya, but if you're using any of the supported apps, frame ranges work the same way, so you don't have to worry about how to use it differently in Max or Mobu or anything like that. The concepts here will apply to everything. Now, what we have up here are called pose groups, and each of these groups will have frame ranges within it. So your brows, eyes, and mouth are the pose groups that we have, and each of these will have a group of frame ranges. Now by default, you're going to have all frames, unless you've chosen to use the valid frames feature in Analyzer, where it will selectively track certain frame ranges. By default, you should see all frames here. Now there's a couple different things we can do. The first thing we can do is if you simply double-click this, or in some cases that won't work, so you might need to click Edit depending on which application you're using. You have the ability here to actually type in the frame range. Now I could type it right here, or I can double click it if you're in Maya. I could say 200 to 300, and that's going to limit anything I do, including my pose creation, pruning values, etc., to this frame range only. So if I were to retarget, it's only going to retarget within that frame range. Now that can be really helpful from time to time if you want to work on a specific section, if you want to apply certain pruning values to only a specific section, or perhaps probably one of the most common ways to use it is you might have just a really long shot, and for your own sanity you want to break it up into sections. In this case I have a 1000 frame shot, so what I can actually do here is I could say 0 to 500, and then I can create a new frame range, and I could say we'll call it second half, and I could say 501 to 1005. So now I've broken my shot up into two frame ranges, and I can work separately. Now what's nice about this is while I'm in these frame ranges, all of my poses here are still available, meaning if I've set a pose on frame 100, or I guess let's use an example here I already have. If I've set a pose on 279, I can still use that pose in my second frame range, and that's really handy if you want to use a certain shape or control change that you made to a pose in an earlier section, but still use it later on. You can make as many of these frame ranges as you like. You're going to have to break it down into your frame ranges as you go, but yeah, you can. There's no limit on how many you can create. One thing though is if you try to create a new frame range, let's say third range, and then I give it a range that I already have, it's going to tell me that I cannot set overlapping ranges. So if you did want to add a third range in here, you'd need to come in and say, edit this, call it 300, and now I can make my third one, we'll call it middle range, and then I'll type in my number here. We'll say 301 to 500, and that's how that works. So each of these ranges is going to have unique pruning values, prune spacing, smoothing, etc., as well as auto-solve capabilities. Each one, you'll have all of the poses available, but you'll need to choose which ones to use. So if I create a new range, by default it's going to turn off my poses, unless I tell it, I want to use these ones here. Okay, if you want to delete a range, it's as simple as selecting that range and clicking delete. You can also make a copy of it. You'll just have to type in new numbers. And you have all of your abilities here, change the name, etc. So if you have more questions about frame ranges, you can go to support.facewaretech.com and we can help you out.